Hello, good afternoon all. I am Professor Dr. Yogendra Srivastava, Dean Student Welfare and Director, JLU School of Law, Jagaran Lake City University, Bhopal. Jagaran Lake City University welcomes you all in our 6th webinar session under the JLU Knowledge Series. Is on the field of public policy and international affairs. Jagaran School of Public Policy and International Affairs is an important school of JLU and done a marvelous job in the last 3 years. The influential speakers from industry and academia are sharing their insights and knowledge with the students. In this emergent situation, it is important for them to choose their ideal line of career in the set field with the help of informative webinar sessions, interaction with the experts from industry and academia. Today, we have a very known academician, Professor Dr.Sairam Bhatt. He is presently Professor of Law and Coordinator for Center for Environmental Law, Education and Research and Advocacy, CEERA. Very prestigious law school of the country, National Law School, India University, Bangalore. His areas of specialization includes contract, environmental law, constitutional law, and right to information. On behalf of JLU family and participants, sir, I welcome you in this webinar session on public policy, environment, opportunities, and challenges. Over to you, Sairam, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Yogendra, and thank you to Dr. Jayant as well for facilitating this webinar. Words of introduction, I do work in the space of environmental law. Currently, we are advising the Ministry of Environment, Government of India on certain key projects that involve in terms of what we call as the conference of parties in international negotiations, wherever India is participating in the multilateral environmental agreements. We are also assisting the Central Pollution Control Board and various other agencies of the government, including the Biodiversity Board, in framing policy issues and considerations in the field of environment. And from that kind of experience, I would like to share public policy perspectives in the field of environment, both in India and abroad. With my limited experience, I can put it across to you. And I would like to look at opportunities and challenges. Right? When I talk about opportunities, I'm talking of opportunities for youngsters in this area. When I'm talking of challenges, I'm talking of challenges in this discipline or in this domain, which probably you all have to prepare for in dealing with. So this is like those that are necessary to bring in preparedness for environment. Friends, we all know that environment is something that is not the business of the government alone. We cannot say environment is also the business of, say, the United States, the European Union, or even China for that matter. I think environment of the planet Earth that is that we have today is the business of each individual being on this planet Earth. And hence, we all have a stake in the field of environment. So let's not forget that. This is the only planet on which there's human life, and it is our responsibility in this current generation to see that we give a safe and a healthy planet to the next generation. It's our responsibility to take care of the environment. However, when you talk of environment, it's about how do you balance the interest of development versus environment. Today we cannot do away with development. We are talking about the growth, we are talking of economy, we are talking of employment, and hence it's inevitable for industries to actually start doing business. Now, if you notice in India, some of the early industries that were there, at least this is not to bring about disrepute to any individual association or entity, but these are facts that one should always note for. The earlier businesses actually relied on natural resources. So the early businessmen in India, including the British government, relied on the rich natural resources in our forests. Timber trading was quite a popular business for the British government. and they used Indian forest resources for funding, even the World War, for that matter. And later on, they did realize that India is quite rich in other mineral resources. And even post-independent, when we look at the big industrialists in India, they all started mining the earth, mining the resources that is there in the country, and started developing their businesses. There's nothing wrong, because when we say iron ore is a resource is obviously for exploitation, it is obviously for use. However, it is a resource that is not owned by the government. It's not a resource that is even owned by the company. Now, in the field of environment, one of the first policy interventions that we must note is we have a doctrine, and that doctrine is called the public trust doctrine. Now, under this doctrine, you will visualize, friends, that the resources in nature, be it water, be it a mine, be it a mineral, they are not owned by anybody, right? Especially the government. The government doesn't own it at all. It is owned by the people. We, the people of this country, own these resources. The government is merely a trustee of these resources, and they're supposed to manage these resources for the benefit of the beneficiary. Who are the beneficiaries? We, the people, are the beneficiaries. And hence, whenever these resources are mismanaged and they're appropriated or usurped, and there is no fairness or transparency in management of these resources, then the courts have a tendency to invoke the policy on what we call as the public trust doctrine, right? So the government is the trustee of these resources. They have to manage these resources for the benefit of the public. Right? Now, at this point, and especially being a post-lunch session and an afternoon session on a Sunday, I should tell you some stories, right? I should, not make it too technical in terms of telling you the law, the policy in the field of environment, which though I will definitely come to, but I should tell you some very interesting episodes on public policy. India, very recently, we had a lot of natural resources in this country, but we did not know that India also had natural gas. I hope you know what this is. And the government of India, unfortunately, did not have the man or the machine to find India has natural gas in its territorial areas. So what they did was they gave a license for exploration, right? They said, can you find natural gas for us? So Reliance, interestingly, again, please note, I'm using certain names only for practical purpose of telling you some case studies or live examples. So they were given this license, and they were supposed to explore and find out whether there is any natural gas. If so, where it is. Right? Now, if you read about this case, you will really find the most interesting part of it. That they found, and they found it in the Godavari basin, and they said, look, there is a rich deposit of this natural gas. And what they said also was that if suppose we have found it as an explorer with an exploration license, we must also get the first right to exploit it, which means extract it and sell it. Right? But the government said, look, we had only given you an exploration license, not an exploitation license. There was a huge problem regarding what should be the basis of granting Reliance the Godavari basin for exploration and exploitation of natural gas. We were not sure. We did not have a policy in place, because first of all, we did not know whether we will find it or not. And once we found it, we did not know whether we should give it to Reliance or not. And in the meantime, as you all know, the elder brother and the younger brother unfortunately split, and they decided to split the natural gas that they had found between themselves. Right? Now, the Supreme Court, in a very interesting case, said, hello, this is not a family dispute. Natural gas that is found, yes, you might have found it, belongs to the state. It belongs to the people. You cannot privately divide this among yourself unless the state agrees for the same. Now, I think what this does to a larger extent is it brings about the kind of public policy dimension that we must have in what I would want to call as the natural resource management. When we have so much of resources in nature, what is our public policy dimension to it? How do we manage it? What is our principles of management? And please note, the principles of management very clearly say that you must manage your natural resources in such a manner that it does not extinct the resource itself. You must manage it in such a balanced environment that you not only cater to the needs of the present generation, but but you also do not inflict injury to the needs of the future generation. And that's exactly what we know as the policy on intergenerational equity, especially in the field of environment. So these, I think, are some interesting dimensions and opportunities that we have while framing public policy in the field of environment, especially in India, but more so internationally, because international environmental policy is affecting India. It is rather international policy is driving the Indian policy to a larger extent, right? So the combination of international and national policies is what generally we see in the field of environment. So this is my preliminary introduction in terms of what I would like to put across and deal today. And though I would want to start off by telling you what challenges we have. Challenges that we have are regarding achieving this. These are 17 sustainable development goals. We call them in short the SDG goals. Right? This is something that the United Nations has put across as something that states must endeavor to achieve. And these are developmental goals, but please note development on the basis of sustainability. Now, when you look at some of these goals, the goal number 1 is no poverty. Goal number 2 is zero hunger. Goal number 3 is good health and well-being. Goal number 4 is quality education. 5, gender equality, sanitation and water, affordable and clean energy. Now, from here, you will notice that environmental issues definitely start. Energy and environment is a very important area. I think, however much emphasis we can give here, it's going to be short of it. Just to pause on the goal number 7, let me just tell you that India has emerged as one of the most important countries championing the cause of solar energy. I hope you have been following what Mr. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been doing on what we call as the International Solar Alliance with France. Kindly note, the only directorate of an international convention office is only in India. So there is no other international office in India. Only the International Solar Alliance office is in India, right? And this International Solar Alliance is a treaty. It's an international treaty trying to promote solar energy, which is supposed to be clean and sustainable. And India has taken a huge step in bringing about nations in developing the technology of solar energy. The point is that solar energy is, though sustainable, is not cheap, right? So when we say sustainable, it means, yes, it is clean, but it should be affordable, right? Today, solar panels, I'm sure some of you would have experience of putting solar panels up on your house for water heating purposes or within your household, or about industries who are supposed to have these solar panels. We call them rooftop solar panels. But unfortunately, it's pretty expensive. The technology is not cheap. And hence, in a country like India, which is so price sensitive when it comes to environment, when it comes to public policy dimensions, please note, all of these looks good in India, but unless they are at an affordable price, there's hardly any value for that, right? So I think over there, India has taken a huge step, and please know, we are right now targeting 20% of our energy requirement from clean energy resources, or what we would call as renewable energy resources. That may include wind energy as well. So one has to look at some of those goals that India is tending to achieve, and there is a huge demand for clean and affordable energy. Now, many of you at this point of time may not be aware of, but let me tell you, if you are students or researchers or those people who are interested in public policy dimension, India is, like the rest of the world, is taking a lot of public policy initiative in what we call as waste to energy. I repeat, waste to energy. Right? Today, you will be surprised to know that how many companies are doing business in waste. Earlier we always thought that waste is waste. It's like, it is nobody's property, and hence you just throw it off. But from waste, companies are generating business, and those businesses are making profits. So, today we never say a waste is a waste, because it is a raw material for many industries. And the industries are into recycling, industries are into reuse, industries are into refurbishing, and there is a huge opportunity that is lying in even treatment and disposal of it. Now, you will be surprised to know that I can give you statistics from my state. Let me just give you one waste and just tell you the business opportunities over here. It is on electronic waste. In my states, there are 38 companies that are dealing with electronic waste. Because in electronics, when you dispose of, say, a laptop or a mobile phone, there are so many reusable components that can actually be used again in the market. So these components are then, actually dismantled, reused, and sold. So it's not waste in that sense. So these companies know that there is business opportunity here, and they're actually doing the same. And this interesting part over here is, if you ask me, today, when I talk about the law on electronic waste management, I'm just looking at the public policy dimension, right? And let me tell you one of the interesting pieces of the public policy dimension in electronic waste. I hope some of you, if you have not, I would encourage you to read about this. And this is the concept of what we call as extended producer's responsibility. I can repeat for you. Extended producer's responsibility. Okay. In short, we call it EPR. Now, what this EPR does is, friends, kindly know, public policy. Okay. Very interesting. Now, in Germany, when Germany came up with this concept, they had told companies, especially those that produce electronic and electrical commodities. Let me give you some examples on the same. Let's assume that there is a company called Nokia. Okay, it's not so popular in the market right now because it's not making that much business. But I remember my first phone was a Nokia phone. Okay, I'm sure it's the same with people of my generation. So if Nokia is producing a phone in Germany, when they introduced this law, they said after the phone is not in the market, or after that time that the phone has lost its shelf life, please know. What's a shelf life? It's a life when the phone is in use, right? It can come from me to somebody else, from somebody else it can go. But till it is in use, the shelf life is assured. But once the shelf life is done, and then it goes to the waste bin, Nokia as a company will have to take it back. This was a policy of what we call as the compulsory buyback provision in relation to electronic and electrical commodities. So companies that produce electronic goods had an obligation to take it back once the goods is in the waste process. So what we would say here is very interesting is companies had a responsibility not only to give you good product which will have a shelf life, but when it comes to an end life, that is the end cycle of the product, then the company has to receive the goods back. So treatment of these goods, the disposal of it was the responsibility not of the municipal corporation. It's not of the government. It's not either of the consumer. But that responsibility squarely would lie with the company that is manufacturing or producing it. So extended producer's responsibility. So a producer's responsibility is not for the life cycle of the product alone. It is a responsibility that extends to the end cycle as well. Right? Now you must be wondering at this point of time, sir, what does this policy do? What does it achieve? It achieves many goals. And one of the goals is, let me tell you, suppose I know something that I produced or manufactured is going to come back to me later on, after 5 years or 10 years. Let's assume that Samsung knows that its a phone is going to come back to it after 10 years. What will Samsung do? The possibilities are they will produce it far more responsibly, isn't it? How would they produce it? Probably they'll use components that are reusable. They'll produce components in which they can probably do another business. They may produce it in such a sustainable manner that this will reduce the quantum of waste that is generated in the market, isn't it? This was the idea that Germany came up with, and interestingly, this is now a worldwide phenomenon. And in 2018 in India, we introduced this into a law, into the electronic waste rules, and we said all these companies, LG, Samsung, Nokia, all these companies that are making electronic and electrical goods, it could be a laptop, it could be a phone, it could be a washing machine which is automatic, which has an electronic component. All of these companies will have to compulsory buy back from the consumer at a depreciated cost. I think it's a great intervention on policy, especially on public policy, in trying to bring about responsible business, in trying to bring about those businesses which have to say that it is not only my duty to do business and send goods out, but it's also my duty to receive the goods back once they are not in use. This probably, in one sense, says that I think to a larger extent, uh, sustainability, environment. We always pinpoint the finger and say, yes, sustainability and environment is the business of the government. But we never say that it's our business as well. It's our duty as well. See, government just consists of we the people. It's us who represent the government through bureaucracy, through people as representatives in the legislature. But I think unless we all step in and take responsibility for the environment, I don't think environment is going to be better for each one of us. I think that's exactly and precisely the point that I want to drive at, the fact that when I talk about public policy, I am more concerned how do I involve people into the day-to-day management and affairs of the environment. Each one of us should play a critical role, isn't it? And that's what public policy dimension should be. And let me tell you, the interesting part here is in environment, very often than not, we talk about dimensions of public policy. We always say that, okay, this is something that companies must do, the extended producers responsibility, right? This is something that they must do. But do you think all businesses can do it? Should there be some kind of finance? Should there be some kind of subsidy? Should there be some kind of tax exemption? Because look, what are we doing? We are helping the environment. We are helping the society. I don't mind. Remember, if anything in public policy has to be achieved, people are looking at incentives for compliance. People are saying, "Humko kya milega? मैं करूंगा तो मेरे को क्या मिलेगा?" This is what, okay, there's nothing wrong about it, friends. I think everybody believes that, okay, if I'm doing or I have been asked to do something, I should get something back in return. So I think the state, while developing policies on environment, must also look definitely at providing incentives, subsidies, at providing exemptions for those industries that are doing well in the field of environment. And hence, if an industry is so-called categorized as green, and it caters to environment and to better policies of environment, I think they should efficiently bargain from the state the aspect of tax exemptions, subsidies, and so on and so forth. So I think finance is an important categorization, and if we have to achieve some of these goals, I think the state has to incentivize environmental law compliances. It should incentivize companies to adhere to environmental policies. And for that, I think the best incentive is to make those businesses profitable and sustainable by giving tax exemptions, subsidies, and exemptions as well. Right. So the SDG goals, friends, if you look at goal number 13, climate action, life below water. This is about marine ecology and marine environment. 11 talks about sustainable cities and communities. I think these SDG goals are something that states have to endeavor to achieve while especially they are framing policy. And I think achieving them is something that India is attempting to do, and they are doing it in different dimensions and different environments. Second, I just would like to bring about the aspect of business, because unfortunately, as the case is, it depends upon which side of the curve you are. Because when I say unfortunately, I believe that I speak for myself, but fortunately, you must also understand businesses generate a lot of employment. They generate the real income in terms of GDP and economic growth. So you cannot do away with businesses. However, every businessman is only looking at profiteering. Profits are very important. You can hold on to your managing director position only if you make the company profitable. If it's going to loss, you're going to lose your job. This, I think, every administrator understands, right? He appreciates this, right? If you are supposed running a law school, it depends upon the law school is making profit or not, in terms of the fact that are you getting enough students or are you not getting enough students, right? So we are all in the stage where we are evaluating performance based on money or monetary quantification. Now, what does corporate profiteering do? I think corporate profiteering, unfortunately, world over, we have seen results in shortcut methods where you do not actually adhere to legal principles, you do not adhere to compliances. I think business greed is something that is challenging. And that's why, if you have to look at public policy and environment, friends, you have to look at ethical practices, the ethical dimension. Remember, friends, if you impose law with huge sanctions and penalties, and if you say, if you violate this, you will get this punishment, I think people have a less tendency to comply. What probably they should have a tendency to comply is based on your ethical standards. Is it good for you? I think if you think it's good for you, probably you'll do it in a much better manner. When I talk of business greed, I don't know if you all have been following this. We always had this dimension in India, and especially if most of you are in Bhopal, I'm sure you will appreciate this dimension. That we always felt that in India we were exploited by the West, which is true. I do not deny that fact at all. We always think that a multinational company comes to India, exploits us, and is taking profits away. And probably who knows it better than you all who have probably been in Bhopal have probably experienced or read about the Bhopal Gas Tragedy, which was a tragedy committed by a corporation from the United States, the Union Carbide Corporation. And I'm sure if you have read the Supreme Court judgment, the Supreme Court clearly says, was there a business greed in managing the business negligently? Because you are cutting cost, you did not keep it securely, and that's why there was a gas leak. But the fact remains that are Indian companies also in search of greed going elsewhere? I'm reminded of the Adani mine in Australia. Some of you, if you have read, look at this very interesting Indian company mining in Australia. Rather, the biggest coal reserve world over is currently said to be in Australia. And there is a lot of protest against Adani. Adani has entered into a joint venture with an Australian company. It has got the license to mine this coal in Australia, and the coal is basically for export. And Adani thinks that it will actually get this world over, including in India, and it will use in its own probably factory, which is generating thermal energy. So Adani has won this contract, but it's facing a lot of local resistance. People are against this company. They're saying, we don't want the Adanis to come and mine in India. Let them mine in India. Why come to Australia? So, look at it. Indian companies are now going world over, and they're doing business. But the fact remains that, are they supposed to do responsible business? And remember, when I talk about public policy in the international context, please remember this. Look, in India, when we talk about public policy and environment, we believe that sometimes we can manage public policy. When I say manage public policy, we think, manage it unethically sometimes, right? I don't think that works elsewhere. You have to manage within the premises of, and you have to be ethical and sustainable in that sense. Though Adani's license in Australia is completely legal, local people are saying this is against environment, and they're concerned about climate change as well, because the Australian climate unfortunately is changing so fast that this time they had so much of bushfire that they found it very difficult to even handle and tackle. So I think over there you will notice that while businesses have every right to do business, how do they do it sustainably? How do they do it by fulfilling the public policy mandate? And according to me, let me remind you, and I'm going to tell you this with another interesting case. Public policy is about how do I take local communities into confidence before I go about my business. See, environment is not about just touching the resource or managing the resource, but it's also managing the local people who are attached with that resource. For example, in Niyamgiri, you recollect the fact that when a company wanted to go there and mine bauxite, the local people said, we do not want, right? I'm sure you have heard about this story. They were probably saying, look, this is a sacred place. We do not want you to mine. We do not want development. We do not want good schools. We do not want good roads. We neither want employment. We are fine with what we are. But these hills are sacred to us. This is something that is culturally and socially very important for us. And hence, though there is a rich resource of mine that exists, we do not think that is something that you should do. So local people protested, and they were successful in that. And hence, what is public policy? Unless public is taken into confidence in managing the environment or in exploiting the resources, I don't think it is going to be sustainable at all. Right? People have a right to voice, but that does not mean they should do that illegally or through illegal means. I think that is something that they can raise concern about in terms of their involvement into the business. And hence, I think businesses must take that into consideration as well. Of course, if some of you are looking at the challenges in India, it's not only in India. I think the Volkswagen case is a challenge world over. Now, from business greed, look at the Volkswagen case. You will notice it was nothing but business greed that resulted in this, what we call as the cheating scandal, the emission cheating scandal, right? And Volkswagen has business in India as well, please note. Now, how many of you know, sorry for this typo over there, it's example twice that has come, but just if you can neglect that. You will notice that the National Green Tribunal currently has imposed a fine of 500 crores on Volkswagen, though it has been stayed now by the Supreme Court. But the National Green Tribunal is also a very specialized environmental tribunal created under Act of 2010. They can decide such kind of cases, and they have proposed. And they said, look, because Volkswagen has put the cheating device on emissions and it has polluted India's environment by selling X amount of vehicles in India, they had a calculation in terms of how much of vehicles were sold, what was the emission standard, and what was the profitability of the business, and then they arrived at this 500 crores. You will notice that companies think that it is cheap to include some of these tactics, as we would want to call it. Now, there are people in organizations who unfortunately do not understand the bigger aspect of environment or the bigger challenges of environment. And hence, I think if you ask me from my very limited experience in this sector, I think protecting the environment, respecting the law is always going to be profitable for businesses. No business, in the short term, you may have some gain by non-compliance with public policy and environment, but in long term, you will lose if you do not comply with environment. The long-term sustainability of any business is on compliance with environment. So if somebody asks me, look at the cost-benefit analysis, I would say that the benefits on environmental compliances are far greater than the cost that is required to comply. So, the initial technological investment may be high, but the long-term benefits are definitely more. Now, look at Volkswagen. It's not about only the fine that they have to pay, but look at the loss of reputation of the company, just because a couple of people decided that they will cut corners and increase the profit and actually cheat the law. So I think when we talk about public policy, while we say organizations must develop such policies, and let me tell you, every industry has a kind of a policy to run the business, right? And when they have a policy to run the business, I think the ethical policy would be to comply with the law first and not to cheat the law. And I think that's very important and relevant in terms of the dimensions that we generally look at. And the Volkswagen case is a very interesting study for most of us in trying to understand how management of a company, which is such a reputed company, which was supposed to be such a prestigious brand, unfortunately lost worldwide, right? Because it decided to have a emission cheating device in its vehicles, right? Okay, friends, shortage of time. I'm going to look at opportunities. The opportunities are pretty huge. I think what opportunities, but before I say that, okay, let me put out the opportunity. See, drafting sustainability policies for organizations is a great opportunity that public policy students have. And I think developing ideas and contributing to change also is something very important. Green procurement, rainwater harvesting, consumption patterns, environment, and public policy. All of these are very important, steps of public policy dimensions. So there's a great scope for public policy students and researchers to contribute in the field of environment. So, it's a huge area that you guys can definitely do it. However, right, let me close my presentation. I think I've taken around 35 minutes, but I'm just going to tell you a story about how a company disregarded public policy. Okay. And this is the story of Coca-Cola in India. So I think I think you'll appreciate the story rather than giving you some lectures on it. So I'm going to give you 3 stories on Coca-Cola. Okay, very 3 important stories in which I was involved. So I know the story first time. Let me start with the year 2002. Okay, so I hope you know about Coca-Cola. It's a multinational company. Great trade secret. It's a great brand. Its rival is only Pepsi. Coca-Cola actually was in India in the 60s. Then it was driven away during the emergency, post-emergency time. Then we invited them back thanks to liberalization, globalization in 1991. So Coca-Cola has been in and out of this country in the past as well. But now they're very much positioned in India, and they have, when they came back to India, they did take over a lot of small-time soft drink companies. I remember a company in Bangalore which was called Torino and Thumbs Up. These were Indian cool drink manufacturers. Coca-Cola has taken them over. This has been the business background. But I think advisors of Coca-Cola don't understand public policy, right? That's what I would want to say. And hence look at it from that angle, that if suppose you are an advisor on public policy to Coca-Cola, how would you do it? Just keep yourself in that position and take these 3 stories. Okay, the first story comes from 2002. Okay, now in 2002, what happened was, Bangalore to Mysore. Mysore is a tourist destination. Bangalore is the IT capital. So when you go travel between Bangalore and Mysore, there is this place called Ramnagaram. Kindly note, Ramnagaram is the place where Sholay film was shot. Okay, you remember Sholay, right? Basanti and other things. So while you would reach Ramnagar by road or train, Ramnagar has this rocky hills. That is where Sholay was shot. Now Coca-Cola said, wow, there is a great traffic that is going from Bangalore to Mysore, because Mysore is a tourist destination, and they're coming back. Ramnagar, everybody knows, and while you are crossing, inevitably local people will tell you this is where Sholay is shot. So people will definitely look at the rocky hills. So Coca-Cola said, wow, this is great opportunity. So why don't we paint Coca-Cola on the rocks? So what they did was they used the rock as their coding board, and they went about painting it as Coca-Cola. All that they have this jargons and so on and so forth. So everything they started painting. So it was very visible from the highways, right? And I am a Mysorean. I used to travel to Mysore and used to find, wow, these rocks look beautiful, but right now they are looking beautiful because there is a Coca-Cola hoarding on it. So we filed a public interest litigation in the Karnataka High Court. This is what we call as the rock defacement case. The issue that we raised in the High Court was, look, these rocks, these beautiful hills in nature, whom do they belong to? Can a private company usurp these rocks and paint the hoardings there? Can they paint their colors there? Is this something that you can do out of your business practices? What is the public policy dimension when it comes to management of what we call as common property resources? Be it a lake, be it a pond, be it a hill, be it a forest. Can people usurp this for their private interest, for their profit and for their business? Can you say this is mine and let me do whatever I want to do? And I think they took this story quite seriously, and they said, look, it was not only Coca-Cola. Okay, please note there were other companies that were involved in this case, but we just pinpointed Coca-Cola because my next stories are based on that. Because it's like saying, is Coca-Cola an habitual offender? Okay, sorry to use that word, but it seems to be like that. So this was some kind of an issue that was taken off, and I think Coca-Cola was imposed with a fine of 5 lakh rupees for having usurped the mountains of Ramnagaram and having used their advertisements over there. And kindly note, the law on this is pretty clear. We have law which prohibit you from disfiguring public premises and public places. The public place is pretty broad. It's not only government buildings and government institutions. Public place means any place, not a private property. So that's the first instance or a story that I just wanted to share. That's in 2002. Okay. Second story of Coca-Cola, very interesting. This was 2008. Okay. What happened in 2008 was there is an NGO named Center for Science and Environment. It's in New Delhi NGO headed by Sunita Narayan. She's a very prominent environmental activist. They publish a magazine called Down to Earth. If some of you are interested in the field of environment and public policy, please refer to that magazine. It's a very interesting, very beautiful magazine, one of the top magazines in India. So this NGO alleged that in the Coke and Pepsi that is sold in India, there is unfortunately pesticide residue. Okay, that means it had contamination. So the Pepsi and Coke that was consumed by us in India, unfortunately, was not clean. Right, there were some contaminants. So they came up with this story. The whole country woke up. We were in a state of shock. I still remember during those days, I was the chief warden of the National Law School hostel. I got a circular from the UGC very clearly saying that no Coke and Pepsi should be served to the children because, unfortunately, kids are used to Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and if you consume that, you're unfortunately getting contaminated drinks. The parliamentary committee was constituted to verify the allegation made by the NGO because even the government took it very seriously. So the parliamentary committee started its hearing. They called Pepsi and Coke and they said, look, ऐसा allegation इन्होंने किया है कि आपके पेप्सी और कोक में कंटामिनेशन, क्या ये सही है, क्या ये सच है, क्या आप कबूल करते हो? कोका-कोला एंड पेप्सी सेड हाँ है, सही है. Yes. Interestingly, people were a bit of a shock. They said, what are you saying? How can you admit this? How can you sell substandard contaminated drink? So Coca-Cola and Pepsi clearly put the allegation back to the government and said, look, the raw material that we use in India is water. The water itself is not clean, right? So you give us clean drinking water, we'll give you clean Pepsi and Coke. Right? So wherever we are accessing water, unfortunately, the water is not good standards. It's not world standards. So whatever water is available, we are making Coke and Pepsi only from that. So unless you improve the standards of your raw material, we will not be able to improve the standards of Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Is the defense that they took. That was the 2008 episode. Now, let me tell you the last case. Shortage of time. I know it's 45 minutes close to my presentation. The last point is 2012, where Coca-Cola, interestingly, was caught in a situation in Kerala. This is a place called Plachimada. Look, they went into a remote location in Kerala and they bought 31 acres of land because they use technology and geology data to find where there will be abundant groundwater. So they went there. They said, "Yeah, both groundwater acha hai." Because it's a water incentive unit. They wanted water. So they went over there. They bought land, and at that point of time, when Coca-Cola entered that village, the villagers were very pleased. They said, "Wow, this is Coca-Cola coming." So they gave a no objections. Put the plant here. We'll get employment. What did Coca-Cola do? They sunk 6 borewells in that land. Started extracting water, heavy extraction, 5 years of, they started selling this Coca-Cola all over the country, okay, because they needed that kind of water. After 5 years, interestingly, what happened in that place was the villagers had a borewell for their drinking water purposes. Now, this 6 borewells in the Coca-Cola plant, they started extracting so much water that the villagers' borewell dried up. This is an interesting public policy dimension. The dimension was whenever there is a conflict between the industrial need for water as against the need for drinking water, what should prevail or what? So the villagers then protested and said, close the plant. Because of this plant, our drinking water resources are depleted. So unless we get the right to drink, right of the business cannot continue. That was the interesting issue that came about. Now the sum and substance, let me conclude, is that, let me tell you, when I see Coca-Cola's episode in India, I believe that Coca-Cola did not understand public policy. They showed a lot of disregard to public policy, to public sentiments. I think they don't understand the public policy dimension. And probably they are not guided very well, or neither they were advised very well, especially on all these 3 matters, as those that concern environment, those that concern livelihood, and those that concern sustainability. Had they been advised properly, had they developed a public policy dimension to their business practices, I think in all these 3 cases, they would have avoided the unnecessary litigation, they would have avoided the unnecessary embarrassment that was caused to them, right? I think the world needs to know that it is important for companies to develop those kinds of policies that are relevant to manage their businesses. I think this is where there is a great amount of opportunity for all of us who understand environment, who are able to appreciate public policy, who are able to guide both the government as well as the businesses, so that there is some kind of a sustainable business in this country. So let me stop over here. I've just taken a couple of minutes more than my allotted time, and I should allow you to raise certain issues and questions. I think what I've just done, friends, is to raise your curiosity in this particular area through some case studies and through some examples. I've not probably covered it comprehensively enough as well, right? Thank you very much.
Can you, sir, share your views on green politics, green consumerism, and green economy? Because these terms are frequently we are using public policy in environment, and it is influencing a lot to the government at a national level as well as at international level.
Okay. Are you able to hear me? Just can I get a confirmation, please, if you don't mind?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, excellent, sir. I believe when we talk about green politics or green consumerism, I think it's very important for us to understand that environment itself is a very emotive issue. It affects livelihood, environment affects economy, environment can affect health. So environment is critical to life Earth, and hence when you talk about environmental politics, both internationally and nationally, before you had the West trying to exploit the East. Today you have multinational companies trying to exploit consumers. Anyway, this is a phenomenon that will go on. I don't think it's going to stop in the near future anyways. But the fact remains that I think today countries like India have taken a very strong positions, and they have decided that they will determine the policies as is beneficial to their economy and people, right? Now, interestingly, when we talk about India, we did come up with issues like trying to give consumers the right to decide whether the product is green or not, whether the service is green or not, whether the product is environmentally benign or not, right? Like, for example, let me give you an instance or an issue. So go to a shop and buy 3-star rated products, right? So suppose you buy an air conditioner. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency, BEE, actually rates these products based on their energy consumption efficiency. But look, in India, most of the times we believe that education is very critical for environmental compliance. People know about this. A lot of people inquire. No, I want a 4-star rating. Bina 3-star ke main ye nahi lunga. Right? But companies unfortunately also thrive on the business of lack of education of the citizens. Right? They know that citizens probably don't know about an agency called BEE. Do not know that 3-star means lesser energy consumption. We are not even bothered about checking whether these are good products, environmentally benign products or not. So I think what industry is probably doing is they're thriving on our illiteracy in the field of environment. And I think that is where environmental education plays a very critical role. I think when the West exploited East, I think it was because of lack of education. Because we believed in India that we wanted jobs, we wanted growth, and hence when we looked at liberalization, globalization, and privatization as the 3 phenomenals of growth post 1991, we thought environment can be compromised, right? We thought health can be compromised because jobs had to be given. I think slowly there is a realization, and I think Indians are waking up to the call, and we are not succumbing to environmental politics of the West. Especially if you notice in the climate change negotiation, we are saying enough is enough. हम decide करेंगे कि हमारा growth strategy हम डिसाइड करेंगे कि हम क्लाइमेट चेंज को कैसे टैकल करेंगे, हम डिसाइड करेंगे कि क्या आप क्लीनर टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे देश में डंप कर सकते हो या नहीं कर सकते हो। तो एक इंस्टेंस में बता सकता हूँ योगेंद्र जी की एक शिप की कहानी है। ये शिप का नाम क्लेमेंसी है। ये शिप आलंग आना था। आलंग आप जानते हो कि इट इज बिगेस्ट शिप ब्रेकिंग यार्ड्स, and this ship
Yes,
was a
yes.
French ship, and it was supposed to come to India, and it had lot of asbestos, right? So what would happen when a ship is dismantled in India is, unfortunately, the asbestos, which is a waste, would be left over in India, and Indian government had to actually deal with that waste. So a petition was filed in the Supreme Court saying that ठीक है, हमें इंडस्ट्री को प्रमोट करना है। ऑब्वियसली फ्रांस अपने देश में उसको डिसमेंटल नहीं कर सकता, इंडिया भेजेगा उसको। तो ठीक है, आलंग में काफी लोगों को अपना लाइवलीहुड इस पर निर्भर है, बट ये वेस्ट फ्रांस को वापस लेके जाना पड़ेगा। जब तक फ्रांस इसको डिक्लेरेशन नहीं देता है, तब तक हम इसको परमिशन क्यों दें, है ना? क्योंकि जो वेस्ट है वो बिलीव ये करता है कि जो आउटडेटेड टेक्नोलॉजी से या जो वेस्ट है वो किसी और देश में हम ट्रीट करेंगे, किसी और देश को भेजेंगे। ये पॉलिटिक्स है, ये इसको हमें एक्सेप्ट तो करना ही पड़ेगा। और इंडिया से ये प्रॉब्ली जाएगा वियतनाम या फिलीपीन, ऐसा भी हो सकता है। कल हमारे देश का जो पॉलिसीज है वो किसी और देश में डंप करने की कोशिश भी कर सकता है। ये फिनोमेना हमको एक्सेप्ट करना ही पड़ेगा। But I think in that case, very clearly, the court put its foot down and said, नहीं, जब तक फ्रांस इसको वापस लेके नहीं जाएगा, ऐसा डिक्लेरेशन नहीं देता है, तब तक ये शिप इंडिया एंटर नहीं कर सकता। So I think there are instances in an episode where not succumb to that politics, and we have put our foot down, and we have determined the best public policy that is fit for this country to be followed.
Sairam sir, on behalf of audience, attendees, I want to ask one important question. It is, what are the possibilities of mandatorily make the companies follow the buyback policy of their e-waste in India?
I think the buyback policy.
Which law could such possibility be explored? Under which law could such possibility be explored? This is asked by one of the participants.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a great question. I think you will notice that the buyback policy. Okay, how many of us know that? Suppose आपके पास एक कार है, आप जब कार का बैटरी चेंज करते हो, आप कहाँ करोगे, कहाँ ये बैटरी को देना पड़ेगा? Can anyone confirm? Can you hear me?
The distributors we are approaching at site or any other company around, they are giving a benefit of that. We are giving it back to the distributors.
Correct. So if you could hear me, today the batteries rules very clearly make it mandatory for a consumer to return the battery back to the dealer. Yes. आप इसको कहीं रोड में कर सकते हो, आप अपने जो कार का बैटरी वो म्युनिसिपल बिन में नहीं डाल सकते हो, आपको ये बैटरी डीलर को देना ही पड़ेगा। ये पब्लिक पॉलिसी है कि वो बैटरी के अंदर लेड है, लेड कंटामिनेशन काफी डेंजरस हो सकता है लैंड के लिए, वाटर के लिए, ह्यूमन हेल्थ के लिए। तो हमने क्या बोला है कि डीलर्स इसको वापस लेंगे, जो लेड है उसको रीयूज कर सकते हैं। तो जब रीयूज रिसाइकल हो सकता है उसको एम्फोसिस देना पड़ेगा। तो मेरे हिसाब से ये जो ये जो ईपीआर का बात हम बोलते हैं, इसमें आप ध्यान में रखिए सर, इसको हम हर फील्ड में लेके आ सकते हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अभी जो नया रूल्स आया है योगेंद्र जी, ये इसको हम बोलते हैं कंस्ट्रक्शन एंड डेमोलिशन वेस्ट रूल्स। उसमें भी हमने रिसाइकलिंग का कंपोनेंट डाला है। सपोज आप एक घर को डेमोलिश करते हो, ध्यान में रखिए कि जो सीमेंट है या जो मोटर है या जो ब्रिक है, आप उसको ठीक तरह से डेमोलिश कर रहे होंगे तो उसका रीयूज भी हो सकता है। ठीक है, काफी जो स्टील है उसको रीयूज हो सकता है, जो वुड है उसका भी रीयूज हो सकता है। तो जब आप कंस्ट्रक्शन और डेमोलिशन करते हो, उसमें जो वेस्ट आता है उसको आप लेक बेड में उसको डंप मत कीजिए, या किसी इकोलॉजिकली फ्रेजाइल एरिया में उसको आप डंप मत कीजिए। आपको जितना हो सके उतना आपको रीयूज करना ही पड़ेगा, ये लॉ आपको मैंडेट करता है। हम जो ये एक्सटेंडेड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, इसको हम अपने जो स्टेट पॉलिसी में लेके आएंगे, हर एक्टिविटी में हम किसी तरह उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं, तो उस हिसाब से एनवायरनमेंट को काफी बेनिफिट हो सकता है।
Sairam sir, another question from the side of the participants. It's can the EPR policy be applied to Union Carbide Corporation (UCC) as in the case of Bhopal Gas?
I was just expecting this question. I would have assumed that yes. My temptation to answer it is definitely yes. You run away by just paying $470 million. You cannot. I think whatever is remaining over there, why should it be sent to Kochi? अभी कोची में उसका हम प्रोसेसिंग कर रहे हैं, ट्रीटमेंट कर रहे हैं। भोपाल टू कोची ये ट्रांसपोर्ट होगा, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में कुछ लीक हो जाए तो कौन रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेगा? और कोची का जो प्राइवेट कंपनी है वो उसको क्यों ट्रीटमेंट करे? यूसीसीआई खुद करे, या डो यूसीसीआई को ले आए खुद करे, ठीक है? आई थिंक गोइंग इन फ्यूचर दिस इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी. However, unfortunately, if I look at the legal battle on the UCCI front, we cannot apply this to UCCI right now. Okay, so let me be very clear that this is over. The UCC, UCIL Corporation, Dow Chemicals का liability, अभी उसको हम you can't dig the graves. It's over. I think we'll have to move forward. What we'll have to tell ourselves is, I think in future, for other businesses, for any such incident that may happen like the Bhopal, this principle should apply.
Sam, where you will see the role of India in the positioning of India with reference to MDGs, because with reference to MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, now it is more important to focus on SDGs. Where you will see the role of India, even at the national level as well as at the global level?
I think very prominent, because we are the second populous country in the world. We are a nuclear power. We are. I think today, if you look at it, sir, from what I would call, please note, especially in the coronavirus situation, kindly note, India's position today is on not only achieving goals, but achieving it in one affordable manner. वर्ल्ड ओवर सब जगह मिलता तो है, बट जो प्राइस जिसमें मिलता है उसमें नहीं मिलता। सी, इंडिया इज चैंपियनिंग द कॉज ऑफ अफोर्डेबिलिटी. दैट्स एन एक्सीलेंट पार्ट, बिकॉज जो भी इंडिया में हम करते हैं, हम प्राइस सेंसिटिव हैं सर. जो भी आप करना चाहते हो, जो सर्विस या प्रोडक्ट चाहते हो, हमारा इंडिया में जब हम बोलते हैं तो पहला हमारा सवाल ये होता है, ये कितना देगा? So, जब मारुति सुजुकी कार आप लेने जाते हो, ये कितना देगा? तो हम माइलेज की बात कर रहे हैं, ठीक है? तो हम हमेशा डिमांड यही करते हैं कि ये वापस कितना देगा, नो, व्हाट इज द रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट. सो वी आर वेरी पर्टिकुलर अबाउट अफोर्डेबिलिटी. So whenever you are talking of SDG goals, see, there are countries that may achieve it, but at what cost will they achieve it? In India, it's a possibility to achieve at lower cost. Like, for example, when we look at the Mangalyaan mission, look at the cost that mission took in, say, other countries to what it was taken by ISRO in India. So we can look at affordability, right? Very important and the practical ground. Second, I think it's about accessibility. My second A, because once it is affordable at a cheap price, it should be accessible to all, which means I must not deprive the SDG goals like hunger, poverty, good water. I must make it accessible to all citizens. No discrimination on that. Rich or poor, पानी सबका हक है. Clean पानी सबका हक है, right? Agricultural में भी हक है, इंडस्ट्री को भी हमें बैलेंस करना है, इंडिविजुअल्स को भी देना है, स्विमिंग पूल को भी देना है. But accessibility is an important parameter. I think in India, I think we can go a great way in achieving that as well, right? So affordability एक हो गया, accessibility एक हो गया. थर्ड इज अवेलेबिलिटी. सर, हमारे देश में अनफॉर्चुनेटली क्या है, अभी एनर्जी का सवाल लीजिए आप, आज भी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी सबको नहीं मिल रहा, और जितना मिलना चाहिए वो नहीं मिल रहा। मेरे हिसाब से सर, आप जानते हो कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये कहा है कि राइट टू एनर्जी इज ऑल्सो राइट, इट्स अ फंडामेंटल राइट। I think you can achieve all what you do. Now, for example, we are using technology. अभी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नहीं है तो मैं क्या टेक्नोलॉजी के यूज करूं, क्या ऑनलाइन क्लासेस ले सकूं? तो मेरे बच्चे भी अभी सफर कर रहे हैं। काफी बच्चे कह रहे हैं सर हमारे यहाँ पावर कट है, पावर शॉर्टेज है। तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का ये ड्यूटी होता है कि सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी ना कि प्रोड्यूस करे, बट उसको ऑल्सो अवेलेबल करे, राइट? सो I think that is an important element. So I think accessibility, affordability, and availability is an important parameter for us to achieve the SDG goals. I think that is where the state should focus upon, so that they can go.
Can you throw some light on career opportunities which are available in public policy and environment? Though public policy is a very wide area, but we can say there is a lot of opportunities available, which is invisible for our students, participants, or the audience, which are right now the part of this session. Can you share something more on that?
I think there's a huge opportunity. I think today, I put out a notice for 2 in my center, and I received more than 150 phenomenal. People are very much interested in this area. They know there is huge opportunity. Both, let me tell you what are the kind of opportunities. Today, if you decide to serve with the government, I think if you are very well versed in environmental policies, you can serve the government efficiently well. Because environment is key to government execution and government implementation. Whatever the government does, if it has to care for the environment, there's an important obligation. Right? To drive government policies, be it water resource department, for example, हम अभी ये जल शक्ति मिनिस्ट्री को हमने स्टार्ट किया। जल शक्ति मिनिस्ट्री, फ्रेंड्स, एक चीज मैं बताना चाहता हूँ कि हम बोल रहे हैं इंटरलिंकिंग ऑफ रिवर्स, ये पब्लिक पॉलिसी का डायमेंशन है ना। रिवर्स को इंटरलिंक करके जो सरप्लस रिवर्स में पानी है वो डेफिशिट रिवर्स में उसको लेके आए, इसको इंटरलिंकिंग की बात कर रहे हैं। जल शक्ति मिनिस्ट्री को हमने उसके लिए इस्तेमाल भी किया है, हमने गंगा को क्लीनिंग का भी जिम्मेदारी ली है, ठीक है। बट द फैक्ट रिमेन्स, रिमेंबर, if you are a public policy perspective from environment and if you were invested with this thought, you would have said first thing, sir, interlinking rivers ठीक है, रिसोर्सेस को जहां सरप्लस है उसको आप डिस्ट्रिक्ट में लेके आओ। बट द पॉइंट इज, जो गंगा का पोल्यूशन है क्या वो आप कावेरी में लेके आ सकते हो? ये सोचने वाले, रिसोर्सेस को लिंक कीजिए सर, बट पोल्यूशन को कैसे आप, जो गंगा में बायोडाइवर्सिटी है वो कावेरी में कैसा फिट होगा? ध्यान में रखने के लिए गवर्नमेंट में ऐसे लोगों की जरूरत है, ऐसे थिंक टैंक्स की जरूरत है, पॉलिसी इंप्लीमेंटेशन की भी जरूरत है। ये गवर्नमेंट साइड में हो गया। सेकंड में इंडस्ट्री की बात करता हूं, हर इंडस्ट्री में एक चीज तो गारंटी है, ये सोचिए कि आपका बिजनेस आप नहीं कर सकते हो जब तक आपको एनवायरमेंटल क्लियरेंस नहीं मिल सकता। प्लीज नोट, नो इंडस्ट्री इन इंडिया कैन कमेंस विदाउट couple of things. One is what is known as consent to establish from the Pollution Control Board. Second is environmental clearance, Ministry of Environment. So जब तक आपको environmental clearance नहीं मिलेगा आप business नहीं कर सकते। इंडस्ट्री में जो पॉलिसी और लॉ समझ सकता है उसको काफी अपॉर्चुनिटीज मिल सकते हैं, क्योंकि हर इंडस्ट्री में ऐसे बंदे की जरूरत ही है। Without that, no industry can survive. And please note, this is not a one-time affair. It's something you're renewed every now and then, and there are various compliances that are required. For example, हर इंडस्ट्री में hazardous waste का जनरेशन होता है, हर इंडस्ट्री में म्युनिसिपल वेस्ट का जनरेशन, उस रूल्स का कंप्लायंस के लिए जरूरत है। आप फूड वेस्ट कर सकते हो, फूड वेस्ट से आप एनर्जी क्या इस्तेमाल कर सकते हो, उसमें आपका ध्यान रखना जरूरी है। सपोज मैंने कहा ट्रांसपोर्टेशन सस्टेनेबिलिटी पॉलिसी। फ्रेंड्स, मेरा एक स्टूडेंट है, वो टोयोटा किर्लोस्कर में काम करता है और he is a sustainability leader. He has done his public policy and he's a sustainability. तो उसने मेरे से एक कंसल्टेशन किया और उसने कहा सर हमारे करीबन 400 बसेस 400 हर दिन एम्प्लॉयज को लेके आते एक्टिव, राइट नाउ Yogendra ji was talking to me very interestingly earlier. Now 400 buses, look at the kind of pollution that they are emanating, right? Look at the kind of cost that is involved to the company to get these employees to the factory, right? Are there alternates that you can think about? Are there viable possibilities that you can do in terms of reducing the cost to the company plus the environment in general? Now, what did this do, interestingly, to my student? When he came up with this idea, unfortunately, I am under a confidentiality agreement and hence I cannot share that idea with you. But when he came up with this idea, he presented to his management. Friends, he got an award from the management, which is a Japanese company. Please note it as a Japanese company. They are very cautious about whatever they do, especially with the costing factor. And I think we implemented this. So can you contribute by your such ideas to your organization, especially from an industry perspective? The idea is an absolute yes. So in the industry side also you have a role to play. But don't forget the third dimension. That is where I wanted to add. The third dimension is non-governmental organizations. Friends, please note there are many NGOs, including United Nations sponsored NGOs, that only encourage public policy students to work for them. First of all, look at UNDP, United Nations Development Program. You look at UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. There are some, I don't know, not less than 100 organizations who are working for sustainability and environment, which get direct or indirect funding from the United Nations. You can work in their international offices. For example, I have an agency called IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature. तो ऐसे जो नॉन गवर्नमेंटल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जिनसे गवर्नमेंट या सेमी गवर्नमेंट फंडिंग मिलता है या जिनसे CSR फंडिंग मिलता है, वहां पब्लिक पॉलिसी स्टूडेंट्स का अटेंशन हो सकता है, उनका इंटरवेंशन हो सकता है, उनका काम वहां भी हो सकता है. तो आई थिंक आप जो स्कोप दे सकते हो या देख सकते हो अपने आप के लिए ये फील्ड में, बट प्लीज नोट इसमें आपको स्पेशलाइजेशन होना बहुत जरूरी है. दूसरा, आपको आइडियाज होना जरूरी है. तीसरा, वर्ल्ड में क्या लेटेस्ट डेवलपमेंट्स हो रहे हैं टेक्नोलॉजी और बिजनेस में, उसका ध्यान रहना बहुत जरूरी है. चौथा, आई थिंक यू मस्ट बी अ गुड कम्युनिकेटर एंड अ ड्राफ्ट्समैन. I think with these skills, if you possess, I'm sure you should have a good scope in this particular area.
Sairam sir, recently Supreme Court insisted to follow BS6 standards. My question is this on behalf of participants. Sometimes it is very costly for a country like India or developing countries or least developing countries, because the rich countries or European countries, US, they are not ready to share technology. So in such cases, in such situations, the cost of the products are going up. How we will address the middle class or the below the middle class to reach these products? So it is against contrary the whole sustainable development theory, and I think more or less it is beneficial to the specific class of people. What's your say? What's your opinion on that?
Sir, I completely agree with you, sir. I don't think that can be a point of discussion at all. I think the point of discussion is how to increase technology, how to increase development, how to increase towards cleaner air, cleaner water. I think industries and businesses no longer can give that excuse of the cost benefit analysis theory. वो कहीं काम नहीं कर रहा सर. अफ्रीका में भी अब काम नहीं कर रहा है. I think even the African continent has acknowledged that environment is a priority. Right, so I think world over, I think people have recognized this, and I think this is something like a basic, tool for management and public policy. However, sir, if I can relate with an example, ठीक है सर, क्योंकि example से थोड़ा मेरे हिसाब से simple हो जाता है.
Yes, yes.
सर, एक एपिसोड याद है मेरे को जब मैंने एक कंसल्टेटिव मीटिंग में गया था मैं. आप लोग जानते होंगे आर्ट ऑफ लिविंग.
यस.
सो क्या हुआ आर्ट ऑफ लिविंग सर? इन्होंने यमुना नदी के तट पर अपना वर्ल्ड कल्चरल हेरिटेज फेस्टिवल किया। देखिए सर, ये तो इंडस्ट्री नहीं था, ये कोई मैन्युफैक्चरिंग नहीं था, पोल्यूटिंग यूनिट नहीं था, ये थर्मल पावर स्टेशन नहीं था, ये एक कल्चरल इवेंट था। और तब एक पेटिशनर एनजीटी गया और उसने कहा कि ये लोग जो रिवर बैंक्स है उसको इलीगली इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं और कोई अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं दिखा रहे। तो मेरे को एक बुलाया गया था और मेरे से पूछा गया था क्या करें। तो मैंने कहा देखिए सर, it is very simple. It is easy to shift from this venue because what you're doing is an illegal activity. Though your permissions, ये नदी तट जो है ये कॉमन प्रॉपर्टी रिसोर्स है, इसको आप इस्तेमाल ऐसे नहीं, तो नियरली 390 एकर्स को आपने कब्जा कर लिया है। तो द बेस्ट थिंग इज आपके इंटरेस्ट में आप कहीं और कर लीजिए। सर, आई रिमेंबर in this instance that the ego came that we have already started it, we have to go with it. नहीं ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है, shift है ना, for you it is very easy to tell, right? All this people ridiculed and the suggestions were set aside, and finally what happened in this case was NGT imposed an initial fine of 5 crore rupees.
Yes.
तो कहने पर ये है सर कि जब आप कंप्लायंस पॉलिसी में ध्यान रखोगे तो फाइनली जो फाइन देना पड़ेगा या जो पनिशमेंट लेना पड़ेगा उससे तो कम ही होगा। तो व्हाई फेस दैट लेटर ऑन, you could have taken care of the safety first, right? So I think the cost benefit analysis is very clearly towards compliance of law, compliance of standards, compliance of technology, no doubt.
Sir, you are talking about environmental compliances, but in my opinion, the government institutions, they are responsible to ensure the compliances, like Central Pollution Control Board. They are not doing their task. They are not fulfilling the mandate, legislative mandate. For that purpose, which we created these important state level pollution control boards and the central pollution control boards. So what's your opinion on that? Because it's contrary to the, there is a law, there is a body, but there is no execution. That's why there is a non-compliance, environmental compliances are there.
Sir, I agree. There are gray areas. Obviously, we cannot rule that out in such a vast country like India with so much of bureaucratic interventions and legislative inaction. But I think the judiciary is playing a critical role, sir. इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं हो सकता है कि जब लेजिस्लेचर ने थोड़ा इनएफेक्टिव दिखाया या एग्जीक्यूटिव ने अपना इंटेंशन इतना ठीक तरह से इंप्लीमेंट नहीं किया, तब जुडिशरी ने इंडिया में उसको स्टेप इन करके उसका कवरेज किया है। तो मेरे हिसाब से अभी जो कंप्लायंसेस पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड नहीं कर रहा है, एनजीटी या जुडिशरी उसको स्टेप अप करने की कोशिश कर रहा है। तो आई सी अ लाइट एट द एंड ऑफ द टनल इन द सेंस that I'm quite hopeful of the fact that things will change. Though in India things take a lot of time and it's very slow and there are a lot of bureaucratic hurdles, there are systematic and structural issues definitely which are not unique to environment, Yogendra ji. I think this is there in every other aspect. हम कंपनी लॉ की बात करते हैं, वहां भी ब्यूरोक्रेटिक हर्डल्स होते हैं, एनवायरनमेंट में तो ज्यादा ही है, उसमें कोई डाउट नहीं है। बट आई थिंक पॉजिटिविटी है और मेरे हिसाब से जो एनवायरमेंटली एजुकेशन कर सकता है कुछ और नहीं कर सकता। मेरे हिसाब से जब हम इंडस्ट्री को ये बोलते हैं कि आप एनवायरमेंटल कंप्लायंस खुद करो, क्यों, व्हाई आर यू वेटिंग फॉर द पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड टू एक्ट? व्हाई आर यू सेइंग ओनली व्हाट इज प्रिस्क्राइब्ड इन लॉ? गो बियॉन्ड लॉ, राइट? आई थिंक समवेयर दैट मे ब्रिंग अबाउट सम सोशल रिफॉर्म and I'm pretty hopeful that things are there to change. I see that change happening. I see industries being far more responsible than what they were in the 1980s and 1990s. I see that there is a lot of public activism because if the government does not act, the people are ready to act. You know, there are NGOs, there are citizens who are watching these industries. They're saying, देखिए आप comply नहीं करोगे तो हम PIL डाल देंगे, तो आप कंप्लाई नहीं करोगे तो हम आप पर सिविल या एक्शन लेंगे। और चौथी बात मेरे हिसाब से ये है योगेंद्र जी कि मेरे हिसाब से जो मीडिया है उनका रोल काफी इंपॉर्टेंट है, प्रेस का रोल काफी, हम उनको बोलते हैं फोर्थ एस्टेट, दे आर द वॉच डॉग्स। आई थिंक व्हाट द मीडिया और द प्रेस कैन डू एंड दे कैन कंट्रीब्यूट is quite significant, right? So I think if suppose a press statement comes that एक industry ऐसा comply नहीं कर रहा है, मेरे हिसाब से जब ये press में आ जाएगा, next day वो industry comply करने की कोशिश तो जरूर करेगा। मीडिया का जो प्रेशर है, मीडिया का जो पावर है, उसको जब हम ठीक तरह से एथिकली इस्तेमाल करेंगे, तब मेरे हिसाब से कंप्लायंसेस अपने आप ठीक होना हो सकता है। तो दिस इज व्हाट आई पर्सनली बिलीव।
Thanks a lot. This is the right time to conclude with positive note. This very inspiring, thought-provoking, and very intellectual talk today you have delivered and interacted with our all attendees. The participants, they raised their number of questions, and you rightly pointed out your views as well as their questions well answered by you. So on behalf of Jagran Lake City University, on behalf of Jagran School of Public Policy and International Affairs, I want to say thank you. Thanks once again, Sairam sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. All the best to everybody around, and my regards and prayers for stay home, stay safe. Good day. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who has organized this webinar as well. Thank you, Divakar ji, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.